Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kenda Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous male left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of February 21st, 2022, and a date of marriage of 2005. He has a boomerang who is a high-energy replayer. He says, my midlife crisis wife has recently gone through a dramatic change. The alienator seemed to leave the picture in early June of 2023, and since then, she's been more attentive and generally shown a lot more kindness. There's been some consistency in this, and she's really making an effort to be more pleasant. I've seen MLCer only once in this period when I spoke about her to a mutual friend, and she wasn't happy about that. Other than that, I'm seeing much more of my old wife. It kind of feels like the beginning of replay. Or how it was at the beginning of replay is what I think he is meaning. Is this what's called a touch and go? I'm also not sure if she's a clinging boomerang or a boomerang. I often get dozens of text messages a day. Some are about the kids, but also some are friendly ones, but she hasn't since the early days spoken at all about her emotions and how she feels about us. I'm finding this period hard as it feels like a lot of mixed messages. How should I act around her? We've lived apart since May of 2022. So she's a clinging boomerang. So you wondered if she was just a regular one. She's a clinging boomerang. You get dozens of text messages a day, usually even dozens that are about the kids. Or let's say dozens and 6 of them were about the kids. Let's say it was 1 dozen. So you had 12 a day, 6 about the kids. 6 messages about the kids is probably more every day. More than is necessary. So, the others probably aren't, hey, have you done your taxes? Hi, I need to get the oil changed. Hi, I have some business dealing. Hi. It's not business. If she's making up reasons to contact you. Some of them might be, here's a funny meme, whatever it is. There's a clingingness to that. So your confusion on whether she's clinging or not was because she hasn't spoken about emotions or feelings. But you don't have to speak about emotions and feelings because not all communication is verbal. You can still communicate the emotional connection through other actions. And that's what she's doing in those text messages. It doesn't mean she's way far on the clinging spectrum, but it also doesn't seem to me that that I'm going, oh, she's kind of clinging, kind of not quite. Just those text messages where they aren't necessary, and you didn't say she's doing it a MLCer and poke at you. If that's new, it might be part of this, which, yeah, that's what you're asking is a touch and go. Touch and go and reconnection. They're really the same basic thing, except reconnection lasts longer. So a touch and go might last for a day. It might last for the hour that you see that person that day. Or it could last a week or 2 or a few. A reconnection is longer. It's not necessarily really long. 6 months would be long. If they moved home and they thought they were moving home, it would probably be a reconnection. The term anchor checking is also touch and go. It's just different terms. So she has been more attentive since early June when the alienator left the picture. So that's June, July, August. That's 3 months. She might even be in reconnection type of touch and go territory. That doesn't mean it's going to last or not. So how should you act around her? She's being relatively pleasant, it sounds. She's not monstering, except that she doesn't like it when you talk to mutual friends about her. I mean, that's key, the about her. Set boundaries. Okay, and the boundaries might be something about, I'm going to right now make some assumptions that I don't know that are true, but I'm going to assume that you live apart, and you said that, but that if you're in the house, that was hers, and she left, and you've got the kids there, maybe a 50-50, but if you're in the house, if you moved, it's a little different dynamics, but that just because that house was hers, where she lived, it doesn't mean she should be able to come in and walk right through the door, first unannounced or without knocking. Now, maybe when she's announced she's coming over, she could walk in without knocking. That is up to you on the boundary. I mean, sometimes, my mom and I walked into my grandparents' house without knocking, and my Uncle John, my mom's brother's house. We just walk in all the time. But this is a little different. She doesn't have the same rights anymore. And I don't mean legally. I mean right of spouse type of rights, because she left. Now, if she's the one left in the house, you actually have to reverse that and respect the boundary regarding her. If she says it's okay, or hasn't complained that you do open the door when you walk over, but you still need to announce that you're coming over. That part is very important because it's just courtesy. So maintain certain boundaries of respect. Next, been more attentive. How are you? Be grace to her. Let her know that you enjoy being with her and in her company. Smile. It's amazing how just simply, and show gratitude. Thank you. Find something to say thank you about if you can't think about it. Thank you. Thank you for being such a wonderful mother to our children. Find something. Today, Chuck walked the kids to the bus stop because I had a dog cleaning emergency. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. He was trying to rush out the door, and yet he did it. He wanted to be gone before that. No, he did it. And he didn't complain that he was doing it when I said, I really need this. He just did it. Thank goodness. Show gratitude for the little things, the unexpected things, the expected things. Don't use the excuse that, well, that's just part of that person's job, so why should I comment? No. Show gratitude. You can go over the top a little with it. Okay? That's part of the kindness and part of the grace and part of showing forgiveness. Make yourself that attractive force. If it's too much for you right now, because you're still working on your healing, then get that healing to a place where you can do those things. Because how should you act around her? Should you act cold and aloof? Should you act warm and gracious? Well, it's going to depend partly on how she's being towards you. I would prefer warm and gracious, but I also would prefer that the situation allows for the warm and gracious. And there are some where it may not. She's not with an alienator right now. She's not with the same alienator right now. It doesn't mean, supposedly, but it doesn't mean that that is over or that it's not. We're just going to move forward as though she's not with him and be there as her friend. Be warm, be cordial, be friendly. But when she gets to the point of you feel that you're being used, step back with a boundary and think about whether the boundary is something that needs to be communicated to her or not. So you are a year and a half in, which unfortunately is still the early days. And MLCers are 3 to upwards of 7. And many have said that women are on the shorter side, but I would still place that within the range. If you had an MLCer who really did have a 3-year and they were done at 3 years, I would say 2 years. I might start seeing those greater signs of, oh yes, they're coming around. And you're at 18 months, you're not quite there, but you're approaching that. Now, just so you know, the 3-year, the earlier mark, I don't put most of them at that mark. So I'm not saying she is. I'm just saying you are a few months away from the earliest, where if she is an earlier returner, and not premature, but earlier, or less, a shorter MLC, then in a few months you might notice that. But right now you approach the situation as though it's all good. It's all positive. Because you can be the leader. She may not see that you're leading her through and in the tunnel, but you are a motivating force, an attractive force, a force of strength and solidarity and grace, forgiveness. You believe in her. MLCers have a confidence problem. They don't believe in themselves, so somebody's got to do it for them. And this could be a balancing act. if she starts to eat cake, if she starts to want to take advantages that aren't fair, and life's not fair, so it's not always going to be fair. If she wants to go out and party and leave the kids with you all the time, how much of that is fair? How much of that is, well, tough it up? And how much of that is, no, set a boundary and say, you know what? You're a parent. I'm not available right now. And that's important to do too. So you're in a good time, and yet it is a balancing act time, because how nice we are could bring them into a cake eating zone. And then we have to stretch back over that tightrope line, which is why sometimes I say, you know what? Cake eating isn't just an all bad thing. You need to give them tidbits of cake. You get a little bit and you push the boundaries. Remember that tightropes, well, it says tight, but they flex. You stand on a tightrope and it goes down slightly. It's not a balance beam. They can waver. And so you're going to push on that, just like I think of a tightrope, tighter than, thank goodness, but of the boundaries in a wrestling or boxing ring. I think it's the boxing ring. And they fall on them and they flex and they flex. So you may not even fall off the tightrope. It just swings a little bit. And you lean one way and you lean another. To stay perfectly balanced on that is really hard. And so you have some leeway. You have some leeway for there to be cake eating. The hard thing is to recognize when it gets over the top and then what to do about it. But at this point, I would really like to see it get to that point where she starts to realize, I want these things. But wait, I'm having an identity crisis. She doesn't say it that way in her head. And no, I have to leave these things. When she recognizes that she wants the you stuff, but is still in her crisis, and so she tries to get the you stuff and her crisis stuff all at the same time. She's cake eating, but at least she has the recognition that she wants that. And it's the compulsion of the other side. The crisis is a compulsion pulling you forward in the tunnel. And I know that probably sounds really confusing, and it is. It gets confusing when you get to that point of, where am I? And usually what happens is we recognize it when it's gone a little too far. That's how we recognize it. And don't beat yourself up over that, because that's how you know. And you're like, okay, that crossed the line, so now that it's crossed, I can bring it back. We usually don't know that we're about to cross the line until the line has already been crossed, and then we bring it. Okay? So I hope this is helpful. It might have been confusing. Let me know, though, if you have any more questions, and post in the Facebook pages, because you're going to be going through confusing things, and every little specific thing, like on a day-to-day thing that she does and you have a question about, you will get people responding to those little day-to-day things. Okay? And I will see everybody in the next question.